The stars had always seemed beautiful to Yuna. She would press her small hands against the cold glass of the observation deck and count them one by one until her mother told her it was time for bed. She was only 12 years old, but she had already seen more of the galaxy than most humans ever would. Her father, Admiral Do-hyun, was one of Earth's most important diplomats. He had spent 20 years building bridges between humanity and the alien races of the Galactic Council. He believed in peace. He believed that words were stronger than weapons. And he had brought his daughter with him to show her that the universe was full of friends waiting to be made. He was wrong. The council chamber was a massive room made of white stone and golden light. Representatives from 12 different species sat in a circle, their strange faces watching as Do-hyun spoke about trade agreements and cultural exchange. Yuna sat behind her father, wearing her best dress, trying not to stare at the creatures around her. There was High Counselor Viren, a tall being with gray skin and 4 arms. His eyes were completely black, like holes in his face. He had ruled the council for 300 years, and he did not like humans. He thought they were too young, too wild, too dangerous. He had watched them spread across the stars in just 50 years, building ships and colonies faster than any species before them. Viren was afraid of humans, and fear made him cruel. Admiral Do-hyun, Viren said, his voice cold and sharp. The council has made a decision about humanity's request to join us as full members. Do-hyun smiled. He had worked so hard for this moment. We're honored to hear it. The request is denied. The smile faded from Do-hyun's face. May I ask why? Humans are not ready, Viren said. You are children playing with fire. You build weapons when you should build schools. You fight among yourselves when you should seek harmony. The council cannot trust you. Do-hyun took a deep breath. He had heard these arguments before. With respect, High Counselor, every species has growing pains. We are learning. We are improving. All we ask is a chance to prove ourselves. Viren stood up slowly. His forearms spread wide, and his black eyes locked onto Do-hyun. You want to prove yourselves? Then you will accept our punishment. Punishment? For what crime? For the crime of arrogance. Viren pointed one long finger at Yuna. Your daughter will pay the price. Before Do-hyun could move, before he could even understand what was happening, guards grabbed Yuna from her seat. She screamed for her father. She kicked and fought, but the guards were too strong. They dragged her to the center of the chamber and threw her to the ground. No. Do-hyun ran forward, but more guards blocked his path. She is a child. She has done nothing wrong. She is human, Viren said simply. That is enough. The execution was broadcast to every corner of the galaxy. Every planet, every station, every ship received the signal. The council wanted everyone to see what happened to species that did not know their place. Yuna did not cry at the end. She looked up at the camera, her eyes steady and brave. And she said one word, Father. Then High Counselor Viren pressed a button, and Yuna was gone. On Earth, Admiral Do-hyun watched the transmission in a small room deep inside military headquarters. He was surrounded by generals and admirals, politicians and scientists. They had all gathered to witness humanity's triumph. Instead, they witnessed something else. The room was silent for a long time after the screen went dark. No one knew what to say. No one knew what to do. They had sent their best diplomat to make peace, and the council had killed his daughter in front of the whole galaxy. Finally, a woman named Hana spoke. She was a commander in the Earth Defense Force, known for her cold logic and sharp mind. They wanted to send a message, she said quietly. They wanted to show the galaxy that humans are weak, that we can be broken. They killed a child, someone whispered. Yes, Hannah said. They did. Admiral Do-yoon had not moved since the transmission ended. He sat perfectly still, his hands folded in his lap, his eyes fixed on the empty screen. When he finally spoke, his voice was so soft that everyone had to lean forward to hear him. "My wife died 3 years ago," he said. "Yuna was all I had left. She loved the stars. She used to tell me that she wanted to visit every planet in the galaxy and make friends with everyone she met." He paused. A single tear rolled down his cheek. "She was kind," he continued. "She was innocent. She had never hurt anyone in her entire life. And they killed her because she was human." The room remained silent. Do-hyun stood up slowly. He wiped a tear from his face and straightened his uniform. When he looked at the people around him, his eyes had changed. The warmth was gone. The hope was gone. There was only cold, terrible purpose. "I spent 20 years trying to make peace with them," he said. "I believed that if we were patient, if we were kind, they would accept us. I was a fool." He walked to the window and looked up at the night sky. Somewhere out there, the council was celebrating. They thought they had won. They thought they had broken humanity's spirit. They were wrong. "Commander Hana," Do-yoon said without turning around, "I am authorizing Project Midnight. Full resources. No limits." Hana nodded slowly. Project Midnight was a secret plan that had existed only on paper for decades. It was a plan for the worst possible future, a plan for total war. "Understood, Admiral. How long do we have?" "As long as we need," Do-hyun replied. "We will not rush. We will not make mistakes. We will prepare carefully and quietly, and when we are ready, we will show the Council what happens when you hurt a human child." He placed his hand on the glass, looking at the stars his daughter had loved so much. "They wanted to send a message," he said softly. "So will we. Across Earth, in military bases and research labs, in factories and shipyards, people received their orders. No announcements were made. No speeches were given. Humanity simply went to work, quiet and determined, united by a grief that burned like fire in their hearts. The Council had wanted to teach humans a lesson. Instead, they had made the worst mistake in galactic history, and they did not even know it yet. The day after Yuna's execution, Earth went silent. Every communication channel closed. Every trade route shut down. Every human ship returned to Earth's territory and did not come back. The galaxy waited for humanity's response, for angry words or threats of war, but nothing came. There was only silence, deep and complete, as if humanity had simply disappeared. High Councilor Viram watched the empty channels with satisfaction. He sat in his private chamber, surrounded by screens that showed him every corner of his empire, and he smiled his cold smile. "They have learned their place," he said to his advisors. "The humans were loud and proud, but in the end, they are cowards. One dead child was enough to break them." His advisors nodded and agreed, because that was what advisors did. They told Viram what he wanted to hear, and he rewarded them with power and wealth. None of them dared to question him. None of them dared to suggest that perhaps the silence meant something else. But far across the galaxy, on a small blue planet called Earth, Commander Hana knew the truth. She stood in an underground facility that officially did not exist. The walls were made of thick metal, and the air smelled of machines and recycled oxygen. Around her, thousands of workers moved with purpose, building things that had never been built before. "Show me the progress," Hana said to a young engineer named Jisu. Jisu pulled up a holographic display. Numbers and images floated in the air, showing ships and weapons and plans that would have seemed impossible just a year ago. "We are ahead of schedule," he said. "The new shipyards are operating at 300% capacity. The weapon prototypes are entering final testing, and the recruitment numbers are beyond anything we expected. How many? Hannah asked. 80 million volunteers in the first week alone. And more are signing up every day. Hannah nodded slowly. She was not surprised. Every human on Earth had watched Una die. They had seen the fear in her eyes and heard her call for her father. And something had broken inside them, something that had been replaced with cold, quiet anger. What about the Council's spies? Hannah asked. We found them all, Jisoo said. They've been feeding false information back to their masters. The Council believes we are broken and afraid. They think we are building nothing but grief monuments. A small smile crossed Hannah's face. Good. Let them believe it. She walked through the facility, watching the workers build humanity's revenge. Here, engineers designed new engines that could cross the galaxy in days instead of months. There, scientists developed weapons that could crack planets like eggs. In another section, soldiers trained for the kind of war that had never been fought before, that everything was done in secret. Everything was hidden underground or in space stations far from Council eyes. The galaxy saw only silence and surrender, but beneath the surface, Earth was becoming something terrifying. Admiral Dalian visited the facility once a week. He had aged 10 years in the months since Yuna's death. His hair had turned gray, and his eyes had grown hollow. But his mind was sharper than ever, and his determination never wavered. Commander Hannah, he said during one visit, I have received another message from the Council. They are offering us a chance to apologize. Apologize? Hannah raised an eyebrow. For what? For our arrogance. For our ambition. They say if we admit our mistakes and accept their guidance, they will allow us to live in peace. And what will you tell them? Do-hyun looked at her with his hollow eyes. Nothing. We will tell them nothing. Let them think we are considering their offer. Let them think we are weak and confused. Every day they spend waiting is another day we grow stronger. And so the silence continued. Weeks turned into months. The Council grew confident, then bored. They stopped watching Earth so closely. They turned their attention to other matters, believing that the human problem had solved itself. They did not see the ships being built in secret asteroid bases. They did not see the soldiers training in underground bunkers. They did not see the weapons being tested on dead moons far from any sensors. Commander, Hannah kept careful records of everything. She knew exactly how many ships they had, how many soldiers were ready, how many weapons were operational. She also kept a different kind of record, one that she showed to no one else. It was a list of names. Every council leader who had voted for Yuna's death, every guard who had held her down, every voice that had cheered when she died. Hannah had found them all, tracked them all, and written their names in a small book that she kept in her pocket. She looked at that book every night before she slept, and every morning when she woke. Soon, she would whisper to herself. Soon. Meanwhile, the galaxy continued to laugh at humanity. Alien comedians made jokes about the cowardly humans who ran away at the first sign of trouble. Alien politicians gave speeches about how the Council had shown its strength and wisdom. Alien children were taught that humans were a cautionary tale, a species that had reached too high and been put back in its place. They did not know that humanity was listening to every joke, every speech, every lesson. They did not know that each laugh added fuel to a fire that was growing hotter every day. In her private moments, Hannah sometimes wondered if what they were planning was right. She thought about the innocent aliens who would die when the war began, the children who had nothing to do with Yuna's murder. She thought about the destruction they would cause, the civilizations they would end. Then she would remember Yuna's face on the screen. She would remember the way the girl had looked at the camera, brave and alone, calling for a father who could not save her, and the doubt would disappear. One night, 6 months after the silence began, Jisoo came to Hannah with a report. His hands were shaking, and his face was pale with excitement. "Commander," he said, "it is done. The final ship has been completed. Project Midnight is ready." Hannah took the report and read it carefully. 20,000 warships, each one more powerful than anything the Council had ever built. 50 million soldiers, trained and equipped for total war. Weapons that could destroy planets, shields that could stop any attack. Engines that could outrun any pursuit. It had taken 6 months of secret work. 6 months of sacrifice and determination. But humanity was ready. Hannah walked to the communication center and recorded a message for Admiral Do-hyun. Her voice was calm and steady, but inside, her heart was pounding. "Admiral," she said, "the silence ends tomorrow. Project Midnight is complete. We await your order." She sent the message and then stood alone in the quiet room, looking at the screens that showed Earth's hidden fleet. Thousands of ships floating in the darkness, waiting for the command to wake up. Tomorrow, the galaxy would learn the truth. Tomorrow, the Council would discover what human silence really meant. It did not mean fear. It did not mean surrender. It meant preparation. And now, the preparation was complete. Hannah pulled out her small book and looked at the list of names. She had memorized everyone. She knew exactly where each person was, what they were doing, how they would die. "Yuna," she whispered to the empty room, "I hope you are watching, because what comes next is for you." She closed the book and put it back in her pocket. Then she went to sleep, knowing that it would be the last peaceful night the galaxy would ever see. Captain Minho had been a cargo pilot before the war. He had spent 15 years flying supplies between Earth and its colonies, a simple job for a simple man. He had a wife named Yoonji and a daughter the same age as Yuna. When he watched the execution broadcast, he held his daughter tight and promised himself that he would do whatever it took to make things right. 2 days later, he walked into a recruitment center and signed his name. Now, 6 months later, he sat in the captain's chair of the warship named Vengeance. It was one of the largest ships in the human fleet, carrying enough firepower to destroy a small moon. Around him, 500 crew members worked at their stations, checking systems and preparing for what was to come. "Captain," his first officer said, "we have received the signal from Admiral Do-hyun. Project Midnight is authorized. We move in 1 hour." Minho nodded slowly. He had known this moment would come, but somehow it still felt unreal. In 1 hour, he would lead the first wave of humanity's attack. In 1 hour, the galaxy would change forever. "Send a message to all ships in the fleet," he said. "Tell them to prepare for jump. And tell them to remember why we fight." The message went out to 20,000 ships hiding in the darkness of space. On each ship, captains and crews heard the order and felt the same mix of fear and determination. They were about to start a war that could not be stopped, a war that would only end when one side was completely destroyed. High Counselor Viorin was eating breakfast when his advisor burst into the room. The advisor was a small creature with blue skin and trembling hands, and his face was white with terror. "High Counselor," the advisor gasped. "Something is happening. Our sensors are detecting. We do not know what they are detecting." Viorin frowned and wiped his mouth with a cloth. "Explain yourself clearly." "Ships, High Counselor. Thousands of ships. They appeared from nowhere, all at once, across our entire territory. We have never seen anything like them." For the first time in 300 years, Voran felt a cold hand of fear grip his heart. He stood up and walked to his command center, where dozens of officers were staring at screens filled with red warning lights. The screen showed a map of council space. Normally, it was a calm blue color, peaceful and controlled. But now, there were red dots everywhere, thousands of them, spreading like a disease. Where did they come from? Viorin demanded. How did they get past our sensors? We do not know, High Counselor. Their technology is unlike anything in our records. They simply appeared, as if they jumped from nowhere. Bjorn stared at the map, his four hands clenching into fists. He knew, with terrible certainty, exactly who those ships belonged to. The humans. The humans he had called cowards. The humans he had broken with the death of one child. The humans who had been silent for 6 months while the galaxy laughed at them. They had not been silent because they were afraid. They had been silent because they were building this. Send all fleets to intercept. Bjorn ordered, his voice shaking. Every ship we have. Destroy them before they can attack. But it was already too late. Captain Minho watched through the view screen as the first Council Defense Fleet appeared in front of him. They were beautiful ships, sleek and silver, built by a civilization that had ruled the stars for thousands of years. There were 50 of them, more than enough to destroy any enemy they had ever faced. Minho felt no fear. He felt nothing at all, except a cold certainty of purpose. Target their command ship, he said calmly. Fire main weapons. The Vengeance spoke, and the universe changed. A beam of pure white light shot from the human ship, faster than thought, brighter than a star. It hit the Council command ship and passed through it like a knife through paper. For a moment, the silver ship seemed frozen in space. Then it simply came apart, breaking into 1,000,000 pieces that scattered into the darkness. One shot. One kill. A ship that had taken a century to build, destroyed in less than a second. The Council fleet tried to respond. They fired their weapons at the human ships, expecting to see explosions and damage. But the human shields held without even flickering. The Council weapons, which had conquered 100 worlds, did nothing at all. Continue firing, Minho ordered. Destroy them all. It took 4 minutes. 4 minutes to destroy 50 ships that represented the pride of the Galactic Council. 4 minutes to show the galaxy that everything had changed. When the last Council ship exploded, Minho sat back in his chair and looked at his crew. They were not cheering. They were not celebrating. They knew this was only the beginning. Send a message to Admiral Do-hyun, Minho said. First objective complete. Moving to Phase 2. Across Council space, the same scene repeated itself. Human fleets appeared from nowhere and destroyed everything in their path. Defense stations that had protected planets for generations were turned to dust. Patrol ships were hunted down and eliminated. Communication relays were captured or destroyed, cutting the Council off from its own territory. In the Council chamber, Bjorn watched the reports come in with growing horror. Every minute brought news of another defeat, another loss, another impossible human victory. His advisors ran around in panic, screaming orders that no one followed. How is this possible? Bjorn shouted. They were nothing. They were children. They could not have built this in 6 months. They had. While the Council laughed and celebrated, while Bjorn gave speeches about human weakness, Earth had been building the most powerful war machine the galaxy had ever seen. Every ship, every weapon, every soldier had been created in secret, hidden from Council eyes by technology that should not have existed. The humans had not just been preparing for war. They had been preparing to win. Admiral Do-hyun watched the battle reports from his command ship, the memory of Yuna. He had named it himself because he wanted the Council to know exactly why they were dying. Every ship in the fleet carried her name somewhere, painted in letters that could be seen from space. Admiral, Commander Hana said, appearing on his screen. Phase 1 is complete. We control 70% of Council border space. Their main fleets are retreating to the core worlds. Don nodded. And our losses? Minimal. 3 ships damaged, no ships destroyed. Their weapons cannot penetrate our shields. Good. Do-hyun looked at the tactical map, where green dots were pushing deeper and deeper into red territory. Begin Phase 2. I want the Council homeworld surrounded within 48 hours. Understood, Admiral. Hana paused. Sir, we are receiving surrender requests from several Council member species. They want to negotiate. For a long moment, Do-Yoon said nothing. He thought about Yuna, about the way she had called for him at the end. He thought about the Council chamber, where 12 species had watched a child die and done nothing to stop it. No negotiations, he said quietly. No surrender. They had their chance to be merciful. They chose to kill a little girl instead. He closed the communication channel and looked out at the stars. I am coming, Yuna, he whispered. I am coming. And across the galaxy, 20,000 ships pushed forward, unstoppable and merciless, carrying humanity's grief and rage, toward the heart of an empire that had made the mistake of believing that silence meant weakness. They would learn the truth soon. Enough. Silence meant patience. Silence meant preparation. And now silence was over. General Sunwoo had been a teacher before the war. She had spent 20 years in a small school on the outskirts of Seoul, teaching history to children who would rather be playing games. She had been good at her job, patient and kind, always ready with a smile and a gentle word. That person was gone now. When Yuna died, something had broken inside Sunwoo. She had watched the broadcast with her students, unable to turn it off, unable to look away. She had seen the fear in Yuna's eyes, so similar to the eyes of her own students. And she had felt a rage so deep that it burned away everything else. Now she stood on the bridge of a warship, looking down at a council world called Verath. It was a beautiful planet, covered in blue oceans and green forests. 12 billion people lived there, going about their daily lives, unaware that judgment had come. General, her officer said, we have received another surrender transmission from the planet. They say they will accept any terms we offer. Sunwoo did not look away from the view screen. Did this planet vote in favor of the execution? Yes, General. Their representative was one of the strongest supporters. Then, they have already accepted their terms. She turned to face her crew. Target their major cities. Fire when ready. The officer hesitated. General, there are civilians down there. Children. Millions of them. I know. Sunwoo's voice was flat and cold. There was a child in the council chamber too. A human child who had done nothing wrong. Did any of these people speak up for her? Did any of them try to stop what was happening? The officer was silent. They cheered, Sunwoo continued. They celebrated. They threw festivals when she died. They are not innocent. None of them are innocent. She turned back to the view screen. Fire. The planet Verath burned. Across council space, the reckoning continued. Every world that had supported Yuna's execution faced the same fate. Human fleets appeared in their skies, ignored their pleas for mercy, and reduced their cities to ash. The galaxy had never seen destruction on this scale. It had never seen war fought without limits, without rules, without hope of surrender. Scientist Bora was in charge of the most terrible weapons in humanity's arsenal. She was a small woman with gentle eyes and a soft voice, the kind of person you would expect to see in a laboratory rather than a battlefield. But her mind was sharper than any blade, and she had spent 6 months building devices that could crack planets like eggs. She called them sunset bombs. Each bomb was small enough to fit in the palm of her hand, but it contained enough power to destroy a world. The technology behind them was revolutionary, a combination of physics and engineering that should have been impossible. Bora had invented it herself, working through nights without sleep, driven by the same cold anger that burned in every human heart. Dr. Bora, Captain Minho said over the communication channel, we have reached the planet Korath. This is High Council of Voran's homeworld. Admiral Dohyun wants your assessment. Bora pulled up the data on her screen. Korath was a massive planet, home to the species that had ruled the Council for 300 years. Its surface was covered in great cities, monuments to a civilization that considered itself the greatest in the galaxy. One sunset bomb will be sufficient, she said. Placed in the planet's core, it will trigger a chain reaction that will destroy everything within 6 hours. And the population? 42 billion. They will have enough time to understand what is happening, but not enough time to escape. Minho was silent for a moment. Is there any other way? There are many other ways, Captain. We could bomb their cities from orbit. We could land troops and fight them on the ground. We could blockade them and let them starve. Bora paused. But Admiral Doanyu's orders were clear. The Council species are to be erased. Not defeated. Not conquered, erased. She looked at the data on her screen, at the billions of lives that would end because of her invention. She thought about Yuna, about the way the Council had treated humanity like insects to be crushed. They wanted to send a message, she said quietly. So will we. High Counselor Varan had retreated to his palace on Korath, surrounded by the last of his guards. The great building had stood for 10,000 years, a symbol of council power and glory. Now it felt like a tomb. We must negotiate, one of his advisors begged. We must offer them something, anything. Perhaps if we give them territory or resources, or promise to punish those responsible for the execution. They do not want territory, Viorn said. His voice was hollow, empty of the arrogance that had defined him for centuries. They do not want resources. They do not want punishment. Then what do they want? Viorn looked out the window at the sky. Somewhere up there, human ships were gathering, preparing to deliver judgment on everything he had built. They want us gone, he said. They want us to never have existed. They want the galaxy to forget we were ever here. He thought about the human girl, the one he had killed to send a message. He remembered her face, her brave eyes, the way she had called for her father at the end. At the time, he had felt nothing but satisfaction. Now, for the first time, he felt something else, regret. I made a mistake, he whispered. I thought they were weak. I thought they would break. But they are not weak. They are patient. And their patience has run out. The sunset bomb arrived on Korath at noon local time. It was delivered by a small drone that slipped through the planet's defenses without being detected. The drone burrowed deep into the planet's crust, deeper and deeper, until it reached the molten core dot, then it detonated. The explosion was not visible from space at first. It started deep underground, a wave of energy that spread outward in all directions. The planet's surface began to crack, great fissures opening up that swallowed cities whole. Mountains collapsed. Oceans boiled. The sky turned red with fire. Bora watched the data stream on her screen, tracking the destruction with clinical precision. The chain reaction was proceeding exactly as she had calculated. In 6 hours, there would be nothing left of Korath but dust and debris. Doctor, Captain Minho said, we are receiving transmissions from the planet. Distress calls. I know, Bora said. I can hear them. Millions of voices, screaming for help that would never come. Begging for mercy that had been denied to a 12-year-old girl 6 months ago. Calling for their children, their parents, their loved ones. Bora listened to every voice. She made herself listen because she wanted to remember. She wanted to remember what humanity was capable of when it was pushed too far. This is who we are now, she whispered to herself. This is what they made us. Around her, the bridge crew was silent. Some of them were crying. Others stared at their screens with empty eyes. They had all believed in the mission when it started. They had all wanted revenge for Yuna's death. But now, watching a planet die, They understood the true cost of what they were doing. They were not just winning a war. They were ending a species. Admiral Do-hyun received the report of Korath's destruction in his private quarters. He read it once, then set it aside and looked at the photograph on his desk. It showed Yuna on her 8th birthday, smiling at the camera, holding a cake covered in stars. "It is almost over," he said to the photograph. "Soon, everyone who hurt you will be gone. And then, I do not know what happens then." He closed his eyes and tried to remember what peace felt like. But the memory was gone, burned away by 6 months of grief and rage. There was only the war now. There was only the reckoning, and it was not finished yet. 1 year after the war began, it was over. The Galactic Council no longer existed. Its 12-member species, which had ruled the stars for thousands of years, were gone. Their planets were dust. Their ships were wreckage. Their people were memories, fading with each passing day. Admiral Do-hyun stood in a place that had once been the council chamber. The great room of white stone and golden light was now a ruin, open to the cold stars above. The seats where representatives had sat were empty, broken, covered in ash. The spot where Yuna had died was marked only by a small pile of rubble. He knelt down and touched the ground, where his daughter had taken her last breath. His hand trembled, and for the first time in a year, he allowed himself to cry. "I did what you would have hated," he whispered. "You were kind. You wanted to make friends with everyone. And I became a monster. I destroyed everything you loved about the galaxy." He stayed there for a long time, alone in the ruins, crying for a daughter who would never come back and a soul he had lost along the way. When he finally stood up, Commander Hannah was waiting for him at the entrance. Her face was tired, marked by the weight of everything they had done. She had aged a decade in a single year, and her eyes held a darkness that would never fully fade. "Admiral," she said softly, "the final reports are in. All council species have been eliminated. There are no survivors." Do-hyun nodded slowly. "And the records?" "Being erased as we speak. Every mention of them in galactic databases, every book, every file, every memory crystal. Within a month, there will be no proof they ever existed." This had been Do-hyun's final order, not just to destroy the council, but to erase them completely. He wanted the galaxy to forget their names, their faces, their history. He wanted it to be as if they had never been born. Some called it justice. Others called it cruelty beyond measure. Do-hyun did not care what they called it. It was simply necessary. "What about the neutral species?" he asked. "The ones who did not support the execution?" "They have been left alone, as ordered. We have sent them a message explaining what happened and why. Most of them have expressed understanding." Understanding. That was a general word for terror. The neutral species had watched the most powerful civilization in the galaxy disappear in a single year. They had seen what happened to those who harmed humanity. They would not forget the lesson, and they would not make the same mistake. Do-hyun walked out of the ruined chamber and looked up at the stars. They looked different now, emptier somehow. 12 species had lived among those stars just a year ago. Now they were gone, as if they had never existed. "Prepare my ship," he said. "I have one more thing to do." The memory of Yuna flew to a quiet corner of space, far from any planet or station. It was a place of absolute darkness and silence, a void where nothing lived and nothing grew. Do-hyun had chosen it carefully. He took a small object from his pocket and held it in his hands. It was the photograph of Yuna on her 8th birthday, the same one that had sat on his desk throughout the war. He had looked at it every day, drawing strength from her smile, reminding himself why he fought. Now, the fighting was over, and he had to let her go. "Yuna," he said to the empty void, "I do not know if you can hear me. I do not know if there is anything beyond death, any place where you might be watching. But I need to say this anyway." He paused, struggling to find the words. "I loved you more than anything in the universe. When they took you from me, I lost my mind. I became someone you would not recognize, someone you would be afraid of. I killed billions of people, including children, including innocents. I did terrible things that can never be undone." Tears streamed down his face, floating in the zero gravity of the ship's observation deck. "I cannot change what I did. I cannot bring back the lives I took. All I can do is promise that your death was not meaningless. Because of what happened, humanity will never be threatened again. No one will ever hurt another human child the way they hurt you. We have made sure of that." He looked at the photograph one last time, memorizing every detail of her face. "I'm going to leave this here," he said, "among the stars you loved so much. And I am going to spend the rest of my life trying to be worthy of your memory. I do not know if I can, but I will try." He placed the photograph in a small capsule and launched it into the void. It drifted away slowly, carrying the image of a smiling girl into the eternal darkness. "Goodbye, Yuna," he whispered. "I love you, forever." 3 months later, the new Galactic Assembly met for the first time. It was held on a space station built by humanity, designed to be neutral ground for all species. Representatives from 50 different civilizations attended, each one acutely aware of the empty seats where the council species would have sat. Admiral Doyen, now retired from military service, stood at the podium and addressed the assembly. His voice was calm and steady, but his eyes held a warning that no one could ignore. "1 year ago, the Galactic Council killed a human child," he said. "They did it to send a message, to show the galaxy that humanity was weak and could be controlled. They thought we would surrender. They thought we would break." He paused, letting the silence stretch. "They were wrong. Humanity does not surrender. Humanity does not break. And when someone hurts one of our children, we do not forgive and we do not forget." He looked around the room, meeting the eyes of each representative. "The council is gone now. Their species no longer exist. Their names have been erased from history. In 100 years, no one will remember they were ever here. This is what happens when you threaten humanity. This is the price of harming our children." He stepped back from the podium and let his words sink in. "We do not want war," he continued. "We do not want to rule the galaxy. We want to live in peace, to explore the stars, to build a better future for all species. But make no mistake, if anyone threatens humanity again, if anyone harms another human child, we will respond the same way we responded to the council. There will be no negotiation. There will be no mercy. There will only be erasure." The assembly was silent. No one moved. No one spoke. "This is not a threat," Doyen said. "It is a promise. And humanity always keeps its promises." He turned and walked away from the podium, leaving the assembled species to contemplate what they had heard. Outside the chamber, Hana was waiting for him, along with Minho, Sunwoo, and Bora, the architects of humanity's victory, united one last time. "Do you think they believed you?" Hana asked. Doyen looked out the window at the stars. Somewhere among them, Yuna's photograph was floating in the darkness, a small memorial to a girl who had dreamed of making friends with aliens. "They believed me," he said. "They will never forget what we did. And because of that, our children will be safe." He thought about Yuna one last time, about her smile, her laugh, her endless curiosity about the universe. She had wanted peace. She had wanted friendship. And in her own way, through her death and humanity's response, she had made it possible that no species would ever threaten humanity again. No child would ever suffer the way she had suffered. The galaxy had learned its lesson, written in fire and blood, and it would never forget. This was Yuna's legacy. Not the war, not the destruction, not the billions of deaths. Her legacy was the peace that came after, the safety that humanity would enjoy for generations to come. Admiral Dohyun smiled for the first time in over a year. Rest now, little one, he whispered to the stars. The galaxy is safe, and it is all because of you. And somewhere in the void, floating among the infinite stars, a photograph of a smiling girl drifted on forever. A silent witness to the day humanity learned that some prices are too terrible to pay. The council had wanted to send a message. In the end, humanity sent one of its own, and the galaxy would never forget it.